So can we just start talking about a topic now? Like a modern event,
A modern
such as the
event?
PlayStation 5.
Yeah,
which
that's...
is... Do you remember how exciting it was for new consoles?
Yeah. And now...
As in our younger years, it was something you kept track of so much more religiously,
Well,
with like magazines or news websites where you were hungry for details about what was happening behind the scenes of these big name companies that you followed.
Yeah, I think definitely like a contributor to that is just the fact that like with every system came like some like insane leap into the future. You know what I mean? Like not to like date ourselves too much, but like just the idea that like we had the flip phone and then we went right into like having like a screen with like pictures on it that we could click. It's like we experienced those hurdles of like technology. And
well,
now
that was such a humongous leap in what was thought possible, and then it became a platform for essentially all the media that you consume on a daily basis.
And yeah,
it
for
being
sure.
in a smartphone.
Yeah.
But I was thinking back on like this. I guess Nintendo probably does this more than other companies because they try to reinvent some part of the wheel with each major console release.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works really well, and they're kind of notorious for doing things that aren't necessarily conventional.
Yeah, taking those risks, like just
With
going into the
Wii
unknown.
comes to mind.
Yeah, for sure. Which is actually
the
last, I think, system that you and I actually... I remember going to stand in line for that.
You put the time in. You put the time in for that. You and Dad were like on a hunt for that thing.
That was awful. Truly awful. But like, it just like, I guess going back to like this idea is that like, I don't think I could ever see myself like, I mean, the PS5 coming out, for instance, is like, I'm excited because there's games that I want to play for it, but I cannot put myself in that mentality of like, I'm so excited for this that I'm going to sit in line and wait for this thing. No. I think, and also like the system just down the right looks ugly. Not that that has any relevance to it.
It looks like a humidifier.
Right. It looks like a binder for like some college like project or something like that.
It's funny because they have two versions of it, the disc, the one with the disc slot and then the one without, and it's like this is the humidifier and this is the dehumidifier. Like collects them all.
That's kind of how it feels. But like I think I would say that I was always more excited like outside of like Nintendo, which by the way they're also planning on releasing some new variation of the Switch soon. Apparently,
didn't they recently make one that was the light version?
Yeah.
Right,
so
with
they
the Joy-Cons are essentially built into the console, correct?
Right. So this one actually is the exact opposite of that one. Apparently, this is all alleged, but like, apparently they're working on. They've told like all the companies working for Nintendo at this point to actually start developing their games for like 4K resolution, and it's like, okay, well, there isn't a console right now in the market that is Nintendo related that can even do that. Like, it's never done that. It's always been like 1080p or something like that. So the fact that like they're putting that warning out, and then there's this rumor of a pro version of the Switch coming out, it's all seemingly pointing in the direction that they're just going to release a more expensive version of the console that they already have out, which is kind of
I don't know how you feel about that, but I shake my head. I shake my head where it's too little innovation in too short a period of time. That just translates to me as, we want your money and we want it as soon as possible.
I agree with that to an extent, right? Where here's the weirdest thing about like Nintendo in my mind is that they were so behind on so I'm not saying behind in a bad way. It's like
they were in a hole.
Yeah, well, they were in they just would just continue no matter what happened. You have like, oh, like Xbox guns, like that's our thing. We're like marketing like Halo, and it's like, guess what's coming out for the next system? Halo 5, and it's just like it's always.
I'm gonna sort of be a divisive person by saying this, but I don't care for the Xbox. I don't follow the Xbox specs or anything like that. The only contribution I think Xbox is in providing any interesting elements to the gaming community as a whole is that it's a competitor for Sony.
And even now it's like,
and it keeps Sony accountable on some level, that it doesn't have a monopoly on that particular market, because Nintendo doesn't even want to compete. Nintendo has got itself out of the hole that it was in by saying, well, and to a certain extent, there's history of this in the past with console releases for them, but they are not at all trying to compete in the same market.
Well, they never have.
Sony and Microsoft.
That the only time Nintendo ever seemed like they were competing was when there was like the Dreamcast like era. We're talking about like GameCube, and even then, it wasn't even really. I think the GameCube was the part where they just decided to pivot. It's like, look, we're not playing the same game that you guys are going to be playing. Like, we're just going to solely rely on the games that we make. And there is a strength in that for Nintendo, right? Is that they really do tend to focus on just that element and then reinvent the console over and over and over again.
Well, Nintendo, in my eyes, has a better grip on game exclusivity.
Sure.
Whereas the PlayStation platform and the Xbox platform end up being somewhat interchangeable title-wise, and to an extent, they even compete with the PC market, because a lot of the titles that come through the PlayStation lineup and the Xbox lineup is also a lineup of games that you end up seeing either ported to PC shortly afterwards, or vice versa. It's a PC title that is then ported to one of those consoles.
Well, and that's
whereas Nintendo not only has exclusive hold on, a Mario franchise or a Zelda franchise, etc., which never get ported to one of those other consoles. So you have to buy into the Nintendo ecosystem to participate in those great titles. And they make sure, at least on a generational level, that at least one of those things is almost good enough to justify the purchase of a console, and then you're basically in. You bought into it, right? And that was, I don't want to digress too far here, but that was literally how I got my PS4. Was I saw what Bloodborne was, and I said, I don't think I can avoid playing this any longer, because I obviously didn't buy the console on launch day.
No.
I didn't even think I was going to buy the console at all. But I saw how cool Bloodborne was, and I'd already been so much included into like the FROMSOFTWARE thing, and I was such a fanboy of the whole like artistic storytelling, and just how unafraid Miyazaki, the game director, was to do all of these off-the-wall things that just turned out to work, and of course it was a huge success.
Well, and like, just to like jump off of that being said, like, the only reason Bloodborne was even on my radar is because you went out of your way to be like, this is the game I want to play, and I think you still have that fucking video.
Okay, well, can I give a little context to what you're referring to?
Yeah, of course.
So, you and I were we were living in the same house for a summer.
Right.
And we both were working in the same place as a temporary job.
Yes.
And literally had some time off, and I went out without saying anything to you, bought a PS4 and Bloodborne, and you worked the night shift that day, and I worked the day shift. And that's you weird. Came home, and I had like hidden the console away somewhere in the house, and I, withheld all of my instincts that said I should open this right away and just start playing the game. And I had to the best of my recollection, I had asked you, like, hey, can you come help me with something really quick? And you rolled your eyes at me, and you thought I was going to tell you that you didn't put something away, or you left something out, and it was just being a dick to you. But
that's funny because I don't remember. Like, you just triggered a whole series of memories based off of you doing.
Well, it worked out because I improvised, because I called you out into the living space, and you had like a bottle of soy sauce out or something, and I just made it about that. I made it about, you left this out. How unreasonable of you to leave this out so that I have to look at it. And you got up. You grabbed the soy sauce, you put it in the fridge, and I just sort of stood around aimlessly, aloof, and lo and behold, a brand new PS4.
It was the fucking...
I can't believe you got this! What is this?
Yeah, the octave of my voice changed to like a 7-year-old for like at least a good five minutes. Like, I could not fucking believe that you even like... Because I was so fucking shocked. I couldn't even fucking believe it. And also, I guess, because you had kept up with games so much more than I had during that time. So just to have that spark of like, holy fuck, we're like, our parents were fucking gone. And I can tell, like, just from like looking back, I think we spent at least
Makes it sound like they were dead.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they were gone.
Knock on wood, they're not. They're not dead.
They were out of
Love you,
town.
Mom and Dad.
Yeah, they're there. Man cave goals is exactly what that is. We could just play that game. Had Bloodborne.
That was the moment where you knew, well, I'm not doing anything for the rest of the night and or morning, because I don't have to go to work until whatever it was, like 11 o'clock tomorrow.
Oh,
so
God.
we took that game apart. There was never we might as well have been a sweatshop, because if I wasn't playing that game, you were,
and it was so much fun.
It was just like swap in and out. Or I would come home, because we worked down the street.
Right.
I would come home on my lunch break, and there you were, still in your pajamas. You probably didn't even go to sleep.
No.
And you were at a point in the game where like I can't look, because I don't want to spoil this for myself. And then vice versa, where you would go to work, and then I had a mile like, hey baby, hey little PS4, it's just you and me now. He's
take that.
The other guy's gone to work. Let me just is the seat taken?
I don't know if we like. And the odd thing is, like, at like for this new generation with like the PS5, like we kind of have a little bit of that same, like, there's a part of this story that feels similar in the fact that like Demon's Souls remake is coming out, and I knew as soon as that was announced, like, there was a part of my brain, because that was also something that you showed me, but like nothing is ever going to replace the Bloodborne memory. Like that game,
and it shouldn't. Like, you shouldn't feel like something needs to do exactly that,
right?
Because, and again, that the excitement surrounding that was also that I could share that intense involvement and that excitement for what came next in that particular title with you, in the other room, and it was, I fucking did it, and it was we both ended up. Some things we struggle with more than others, but more or less you and I hit the roadblocks in that game.
Yeah, the same
roughly
ones.
The same time and roughly in the same place, and part of what made that special was the fact that I could share that pain and frustration and utter unwillingness to give this another try with the human being next to me. So, obviously, there's some bosses that come to mind more than others.
I remember actually and this, I don't know if there's ever been an instance of this like recurring, like for you. I've definitely been in this position, but like you had this particular room in the house, and I think we had gotten to the DLC point, like we were in like the old Hunter shit. And for anyone who's played that game, there is like Ludwig, and It took me a fair amount of like
You
tries.
may not have played that game and know who this boss is if you pay attention to
Oh, that's right.
things that people think are hard.
Yeah, this shit that was awful. In a good way. It like uber frustrating. But I remember like you laying in the bed and you were watching me. You were fucking exhausted.
Yeah, my shift was over. My shift of playing Bloodborne until we literally couldn't stand it anymore. And thank goodness they put that freaking that fucking tongue-in-cheek fucking Miyazaki moment where on your way to the boss room, to Ludwig's boss room, there's that corpse that almost the Dark Souls Hollow equivalent.
Right.
And he's that blood-covered, skinny skin and bones, covered in blood, completely harmless.
Right.
Enemy or whatever it is that's right by the gate to the right of the boss room. And he doesn't care about you at all, but he's there just almost fatigued, slamming his fist against the gate, right? And that's the moment where you realize, this is me. That corpse is me, and the boss is this wall in front of me. And if you decide to kill that freaking corpse, he gives you a bunch of blood vials, and it's because the developers knew exactly what they were doing when they made this boss and where they put him. That you can't. You have no choice. In order to progress, you need to get through him, and so.
You know that like if a FromSoftware like save point is right outside of a boss gate, that this is gonna be fucked. Because they wouldn't give you that. I almost
think they got a little more lenient than that. Like, again, to jump back to Demon Souls. Demon Souls did not give a fuck if you liked it or not.
Do you think that it's gonna be like that? Like in this new one, do you think that they're gonna pad it a little bit?
Oh, you mean like
in the remake?
Sort of make an easier time of it for people who think that they want to enjoy the game.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Well,
but
there's a part. So hey, that's actually an interesting point, because this is the comparison that you and I got in a discussion the other day about the whole Mario games being ported over and essentially not being touched at all.
Right.
Versus, this is one of those situations where a developer essentially, or maybe even the publisher, I'm not sure what the exact story is behind Demon Souls getting remade, because it's not a remaster, it's a remake.
I have some stories.
But what happens a lot of the times here is that the studio hands it over to another studio, like all the source material over to another studio to actually handle the work. Because it's not a creative process so much as a technical process for the most part. And I shouldn't say that because I know somebody will disagree with me.
Yeah.
But essentially, the groundwork is done. Like, the content that's in the game is more or less complete, and it's just about there's going to be some artistic decisions on, hey, so this boss is a little boring looking. Can we do something like, can we pass this through the chain of command here and see if we can get approval to change what this boss looks like? But ultimately, it's not FromSoftware doing the work. They would just approve whatever is being done to it. And so what occurs to me there, when you ask about difficulty, is it's possible that when they hand it over to it, it's a separate set of hands. And this is many years after the fact that Demon Souls was made. And Demon Souls is absolutely the freaking weirdest one of all of the Souls games. It is by far the weirdest one,
in the best way
the first
possible.
One. There's, again,
I like how weird it is.
It's easy to look backwards with a set of rose-colored glasses on. There are some things in Demon Souls that are painful, and it's fine the first time you do it, but a lot of the times what happens, this is what we're talking about with, where you put a freaking bonfire or a lamp in front of a boss room. Demon Souls did not do that at all. They were far more strict with their checkpoint system. So if you died somewhere, you started at the beginning of the level, and all of the gauntlets obviously have been put back in place because you start from square one again.
Yeah, well, they're definitely gonna. I think like quality of life changes is definitely something that. I mean, the game like overall like, and I know that we're maybe gonna disagree a little bit on this idea, but there is a concept of this like remake. There's a couple things to say, but the first thing is like the visual overhaul is nice, but also like you can tell that this isn't made by the same people who make FromSoftware games. I'm not even saying that to knock it, but it almost just looks like a completely fucking different game.
There are some oddities too. I know you had sent me some messages when the trailer had gone live on the internet.
We were comparing, like,
and
I was
you pointed out the camera.
Yeah,
and I immediately knew what you were talking about because the camera sort of lags behind the player character.
It's more of like an odd third person. It's like it's either too close or not far. Like, I think it's just a matter of like distance and needed to be pulled back a little bit. But that's my brain being like, I played this game and this isn't how it looked. And I know that that's like a purist form of looking at like something like this. But it was like, it feels awkward because there's a reason for that camera to be farther back in terms of the other game. But that's where I'm wrong, where it's like, okay, well, this is they're honing in on a certain type of experience here. Obviously, like the lighting is vastly fucking improved. The designs are a little bit tweaked to make it all seem very like uniform in terms of like stylistically, whereas like in Demon Souls it was literally like copy or like take like one crazy aspect of one guy's design and stick it and make it into like its own world, and then the other world literally will be like the complete opposite design. Like they don't flow together. Not in like a
so that's what makes it
either.
so odd, though. That's what makes it so odd is that even after you complete, the first world, the names elude me at the time, but like the kingdom section of levels,
right?
Which actually, now I'm thinking about, that's another good specific example because you couldn't progress through those because that's where the end of that line is where you fight King Alon, and you actually have to break through those lodestones in the other worlds first before you progress. Not important, but you get to the swamp level, and it's completely different from anything else in that you've played up until that point because there's this weirdly claustrophobic setting at the beginning of the whole scene where it's almost what turned into Blight Town in Dark Souls, where
definitely
it's dark, like lighting super super dark. There's way too much stuff crammed either on top of each other or like nothing is symmetrical. The walkways are weaving and broken, and there's corpses falling through this, like just in front of you into the abyss below you. And then after you get through that first joke of a boss fight, I can't remember what his name is off the top of my head, but he's the guy that sits in the pit and essentially never moves.
Yeah,
you get to the open area version of the swamp,
right.
And even though you're in the same sort of category of levels, the first one was this claustrophobic, dark, annoyingly cramped section, and then you get into the open swamp where it's just nothingness and it's foggy and you're literally running through poison, and there are these little islands that are sort of dotting this swamp.
You cannot tell anywhere, like there's
you don't
no
know
indication.
where you are.
There's literally
it's claustrophobic. But for a completely different reason, in the sense that, like, you can go in any direction, but there's no real landmarks. It's nauseatingly confusing from a directional perspective, and that's where you almost do yourself a favor by covering your eyes and holding the joystick forward, and you're eventually going to get somewhere. But because you have this tendency, especially in Souls games, to want to try to look around every corner and see, like, hey, did I miss something? Because they have a tendency to hide interesting things either in plain sight or like right around the corner from something in plain sight. So for anybody who's playing the game from that, who gets the enjoyment out of exploring a space, you get to that swamp level, the open swamp level, and it's painful. And so when I think about the remake of this title, I think it's not when you put a fresh coat of paint on the same content, it's going to be interesting to the people who thought it was interesting in the first place. But what ends up happening is people trick themselves into thinking, "Oh wow, it's accessible again. It's on a new platform. It's a launch title. It's running on like an Unreal Engine or something now. And wow, how great!" And people think I'm going to enjoy this, but you forget that this title was controversial in the first place for a reason, and it was a cult classic, not a critical classic, for a reason. Because people are going to pick this up, and some people are going to hate this thing. I without a doubt.
I almost feel like they're gonna see. That's where I think that maybe that's not the case. I almost think that it's going to be the exact opposite. I think that they're going to try and shift the design of this overall game to fit the market of something like what we've come to know from like a FromSoft game.
That's a really important distinction, because you're making the assumption that they're going to soften this one up a bit.
Well, I'm saying, softening in a way where it's not so crazy different in terms of like that swamp area that you just described in depth is the epitome of almost like meandering and frustration that I came into contact.
And if you died, you'd end up having to start all over again.
Right.
And you're like, please no.
That's what the thing with all of these games. And this is like, I can understand why people don't like these games, because there are times where, okay, so I'm going to make a distinction here, is that with a From Software game, if you wanted to, you can say, fuck this, I am running through the rest of this level. I have died 100 times to the same guy. What is to stop me from just bolting past this area? And
Not everybody thought of that. Not everybody thought of that.
I did. I fucking bolted.
Of course. And then anybody who looks up a speed run of the title is just like, how do I get past this in the least painful way possible?
You just cut your losses, and you realize that you're not going to get anywhere until you hit this other save point. So you're just going to run past these enemies. And there have been more than a number of times for me where I've just felt that way about it, where you just get overwhelmed, frustrated, and because that's like the catch of these games is that they're not meant to be easy. So like that in itself is already a difficult thing to like master in terms of like when we're talking about like a balanced design. But now, like looking really quickly, like one of my other favorite games is Castlevania for the NES, where literally
I was going to say something about that too.
You can't run past shit in that game, and everything is designed to fuck you if you try to do that. It is designed to impede rushing through the process. It requires thought always to like get past. If you want to progress, you ain't progressing by running through this. You're progressing by focusing. Right, to an extent. There are like certain instances where that's like not the case. But I guess what I'm like trying to get at is that, so there's like, okay, but it's good that From Software may have like allowed for people to run past certain difficulties. It's not the easiest thing, but you can do it, right? They set up shortcuts. They set up all these things to make it easier for you.
Not in Demon Souls. Demon Souls is not a short. It's because they built their levels linearly.
Right. Well,
in Demon Souls.
And the concept of linear kind of gets very confusing because the design of each level is not consistent. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. Well, in this instance, from a game design level, I would say in a bad way. That swamp that you're describing, Daniel, there is so the map is split down the middle. For those who just haven't played it, is split right down the middle by this gate. And you start on the left side of the gate. And if you're walking to the other side of this fence, you have to go all the way to the top of the map and then enter this small gap in the top of the map. And it takes like a considerable amount of time to get to this side.
It's big for how fast the character moves, and the swamp makes you slow.
If you don't know where that entrance is, you are going to spend at least 20 to 30 minutes meandering around.
You'll die before then. You'll die because chances are you're thinking, well, there's all this empty space out here and I can walk on it, so there must be something of interest, right? So you end
Well,
up
it
going to the
isn't.
swamp, and the swamp is poison. So you're gonna run yourself out of consumables because most people think, oh, okay, well, I just have a little bit more to go, right? So I'm gonna pop it. I'm gonna pop some grass, or if you are lucky enough to buy the antidotes from the old lady in that frickin' house at the beginning of the first level, which
Yeah,
you
but you
might not have
don't
even
know.
seen her.
You don't even know that she's there half the
You don't even
time.
know what this is. This is a trope of all FromSoft games where you run into characters that are shopkeepers or NPCs, but they put them in an area where you almost are suspicious that they're going to attack you if you don't attack them first.
Right.
There's no reason that you for a while you have no way of distinguishing friend from foe, because as far as you're concerned, everything is your enemy, because the thing waiting around the corner is going to bite you or grab you or fall down from the ceiling, and you know you're weighing the risk of, I'm going to attack this thing first because I do not want to die and start over, and then you attack it and you realize, oh, that was a buddy, because I had the same moment in the Bloodborne, the Old Hunters DLC, with Simon,
Right.
the character that follows you throughout the
Yeah, and
DLC and
he's got his
moves
spear.
progressively as you kill bosses. Right, but he's sitting with his back to a wall around like this long hallway in a corridor, and again, you're thinking, this is just a unique looking enemy that I haven't seen yet, so I'm just going to take a swat at him before he can attack me. And then you realize that, his dialogue starts and he's like, stop that. And you realize that, oh, it speaks, so it probably is friendly. But you have that same moment before with the old lady, but the old lady's in a cramped little dark house, so you probably didn't even see her in the first place to get those antidotes for the swamp. Even though it's, from a design perspective, it's like, oh, well, we can justify putting this giant swamp in front of you because there was a shopkeeper who sold antidotes and herbs and stuff, or, you should plan for this.
Right, but
what you were saying about the design is that there was no real way to expect what was happening.
You can't expect it.
They changed the rules.
Yeah, exactly, because each zone is so different, is that there's no playbook. And with like later FromSoftware titles, like it becomes more easy to expect certain things like NPCs and all this other stuff, or hidden NPCs like and the like.
You're right. They're a little more
Demon's
consistent.
Souls is like, you would, again, like, you don't even know how to go through a level. Like, the unsure, like, it's not like just walking down a path. That's how the fucking swamp starts. Is that you're walking after you beat a boss down this rickety old, like, bridge, and then all of a sudden it's just swamp. And it's like you could pick, literally, like, you could fucking flip a coin and go any direction that you want. So the fact that, like, so that stuff is, I guarantee you, old man Dan, that stuff is what's going to be taken away. I guarantee it. And you know what makes me very, like, aware of this is that in the fucking trailer, they showed off that, like, that, you remember that fucking, like, death boss? It's not even a boss. It's like on the third, it's one of the end bosses, right, for a zone. It's right before the manta ray fight. But you're in that tomb, right?
The blind guy, the berserker looking dude. Yeah, no. I know what you're talking about.
No, not that guy. So you're in a tomb. You're talking about the Cyclops, and that's a fucking weird fight. But
no, I'm not talking about a Cyclops.
Not talking about. Okay, so what I'm talking about is, remember where there's all these
the storms area?
So it's before the storms area, right before.
Yeah, right before. That's
and you're
the
in
blind
tomb. You have to kill that one dude that kills all of, like, these spiritual, like, enemies, right?
Are you talking about the Grim Reaper?
Yes, that's who I'm trying to...
He's not a boss?
He's not a boss.
He's not a boss.
I'm not saying that he is. I'm not saying he is. But in the trailer, he looks like he is. And I was like, okay, well, that's different. You think that when you're in that zone, like, for the first time. When you're in there, you're like, okay, that guy looks... He's the only mob that looks like that. He's got to be a fucking, like, mini boss or something. And it's kind of like a mini challenge. I wouldn't say a boss. But I can guarantee you, going into this fucking Demon's Souls remake, that's what it's going to be like. It's just going to be like, they're going to make these small changes where it's like, oh, we don't want you meandering in the swamp. We want you to kind of go through. We want you to meet the Valkyrie that's fucking sitting in the middle of the swamp that you would never fucking see. Like, you wouldn't.
Which Valkyrie?
You don't remember it because you probably didn't fucking see it. Remember, we were playing Demon Souls, and there's just this fucking NPC right. Remember that gate I was just describing?
Yes.
Right. You walk.
It's coming back. You're tickling a memory of mine. Okay.
So you walk past the gate. It's like one of the first things that you would do, right? After we found out that this bitch was even fucking there, we walk through the gate, and if you just immediately turn right, which is still along the wall of the gate that you just passed.
You realize that, like, okay, as much as I'm following what you're saying, I imagine anybody else listening to this conversation, like, as a visual, you're describing a frickin' swamp that's so fog filled that you can't even see more than like 10 feet in front of the character.
Right.
And you're describing, well, if you head to right here at this speck of dust,
sure.
And then
the point is that it's confusing. The point that I'm trying to illustrate here is that it is the direction where you would find this chick is fucking random as hell. Like, you would never think to do this. You know what I'm saying? Is she
the one that gives you the bit of lore that about the swamp being filled with dead babies and stuff?
Yeah, that's the lady. But she's like a Valkyrie. She's got like
take their unwanted children and like throw them in the swamp.
I could swear on something that I think either one of us tried to kill that bitch, and she would follow you. You remember this? Where she would follow you to the beginning.
I just want to make sure that you're not confusing something, because there is a.
Is there another enemy in that
Red
same
Phantom? There's a Red Phantom. I think it's Mildred or something. The name of the character is like Mildred or something, but she walks around the swamp and she's unencumbered by the swamp, whereas you can't even roll if you're walking around in that stuff.
This is the same.
But she's running full speed,
right.
And so you're
I just remember running back to this beginning and she's just following you, which was also awful.
I want to make sure that I'm not sure if you could even validate this memory of yours, but I think you're combining two of those.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like these two things.
I think they are.
But I guess
that being said, I'm going to capitalize on what you're saying here, which is that you're trying to say that maybe through the art of presentation in the remake, they're going to make it easier, but not necessarily tweak numbers or anything like that.
Right. I think I hate to bring up this other remake because there's like I'm sick to death of talking about it like casually, but
don't say it. Don't desecrate.
One of the things that remake
this always happens.
Final Fantasy VII remake does is that it capitalizes on the moments that people remember being good. And enhances that thing. So, like, that's all I wanted to bring up, because that's exactly what it seems like is happening with the Grim Reaper thing. Is like, I remember going into this level and seeing this Grim Reaper and being like, what's this Grim Reaper gonna do? And now they're taking that memory and being like, oh, well, maybe we can make this a bigger deal. You know what I mean? I think it's gonna be a little bit like that. I'm expecting tweaks.
Here's an enormous. You have an enormous expectation for what this is.
No, I think this is all meant to be easier. I think this is all meant to streamline
the comparison
the game.
you're making. The comparison you're making between
that
Final Fantasy.
We're talking about a massive expansion.
Remake.
No, I agree. I understand what you're saying. And that's not exactly where I'm trying to take this in, like, my point of view of it. My point of view of it was just simply to note that there is a developer mindset that they have when approaching certain elements that people are very conscientious of. So developers being conscientious of, they're going to get lost in the fucking swamp, or this Grim Reaper was like a very scary element to this game. They don't have to like now make the fucking Grim Reaper a boss. They don't have to do that. But I'm saying is that you could give it more importance or emphasize importance or change something. And that's not to make the game like they're not trying to change the entire experience. What they're trying to do, in my mind, from what I've seen, like focus it, because an unfocused swamp is not fun for anybody. It wasn't fun for anybody who was playing Demon Souls. It was great if you had time to kill, but if you wanted to play a video game, it really took effort Like, I remember leaving that fucking area and being like, they're better, like, the next area better be fucking easier. And you know what the next area I went to was, Daniel? I went to the fucking caves with the Dragon God area, where you find, what's the reoccurring character in From Software games? Patches. Yeah, it was the Patches dude. But remember going into those caves with the worms that are just blocking, like, certain, like, exits and entrances into this cave? And you remember how meaningless that entire area is? Meaningless as in there's nothing really to find in there. Like, I remember going into the worm thing and being like, okay, these enemies are tanks, and I can't destroy them very easily. I have to sit here with my sword for, like, at least, like, 5 minutes smacking it, right, to kill it. And then it explodes, and then you're thinking yourself in your From Software brain being like, there's a payoff at the end of this, right?
Dude, no. That's not a From Software brain at all, Douglas.
That's, for me, that's me saying, okay, there's something in here that matters. And the game is going to give me a payoff to this at some point.
Again, you've got a lot of front-loaded expectation, and I feel it. No, I don't know how much time you really spent.
Have that return. I expect to have a return when you decide that you're gonna put the characters into this. In terms of, like, yeah, I don't think that you should force your player into, and it's not that they were forcing me necessarily, but they were drawing importance to this area for some reason. And then you realize that the fastest way to get through that area is just to descend into, like, this pit, essentially. And then you just meet the boss. Like, it takes, like, 5 minutes when you figure that out. But that area you can literally spend, like, hours in for no, like, real reason other than maybe, like, exploration.
Sure. Well, there's like exploring and then there's getting lost, which are two completely different things, and one is enjoyable and one is frustrating.
So JC, like, our producer, just posted this in our chat, which is that they're already changing the game, which is not something that I knew about.
I read it too, and I want to just this is just my conversation with you as far as there's nothing in my gut that tells me that they're changing anything meaningful about this game.
I think they're focusing
again, I have no reason to believe that they're changing any of that, focus or otherwise. I think that they're giving it a fresh coat of paint they ported it to a newer, more modern engine, and there's going to be some quirks where, again, you know, it's the same thing that happened with the Spyro the Dragon remake, where, okay, sure, this is a pretty faithful remake. However, anybody who's, you know, any of this commentary that comes out of speedrunners, right, speedrunners immediately come to mind because they spend so much time on a particular title.
They're going to notice any small difference.
You have and you and I have this with particular titles too, that you spend enough time with, is that something just has a feel to it, and despite how faithful a transition it makes from one setting to the other, there's just something that either gets lost or tweaked or changed in that transition. And it was the same thing about the commentary with the Spyro the Dragon remake, because despite the fact that how faithful it is, and I don't remember this feedback being specifically a negative thing, but it definitely has a different feel.
I would say,
and I would expect something like that when you look at this Demon's Souls remake. There's too much that it's been ported over for there not to be some oddities here and there. But besides adding some new weapons or some pre-order bonuses, or, again, maybe there's a fairy that guides you through the frickin' swamp, or the way they light something, or a sign, or, again, how you might give certain luminescence to an NPC so that you know that they're not going to kill you and that you'd go up and talk to them and maybe try to buy something from them. I don't expect to see any significant gameplay differences to make it any less obscure, to make it any less likable.
I would like it that way. I personally see myself looking at that and being like, I want the game to just be a one-for-one. For, like, in the most intensive ways. Like, I do not like the fact that they're that like they're just even changing like monster designs. Like that's how much of a purist I am for just wanting this thing to be made the way it is. That being said, I'm not going to let that get in the way of actually playing the game. Like I still want to play it. I do think that there's a part of my brain that's saying like I could so easily see this just being tweaked just a little bit just to make it a little bit more accessible. Like I'm just talking about just nudging it towards a more familiar audience. Like you're gonna, because this is also like a release title for their system. Like I can see,
which is amazing to me that a launch title is a remake. That to me is a little mind-boggling.
And I wanted to bring this up just at the beginning, and this is where my less pessimistic brain kind of kicks in, where they're not going to change anything. Is that the guy who made this all happen was like the head of Sony, of like the president of like some division of Sony that is in control of like the system specifically, right? Like the game section of that department. And they went out of their way to buy Demon Souls because they loved the game that much. Like they made an effort to just be like, we're going to buy the rights from Atlas, which is the people who had the rights for Demon Souls before, which is why we don't have a Demon Souls 2, right? Like it's why we have a Dark Souls.
Which is why Dark Souls ever had to happen in the first place to continue Miyazaki's legacy of action RPGs.
Right. So just change the title a little bit, same mechanics, more refined, all that other stuff. It just almost seems to me like with that in mind, it was like, okay, well, if you love the game that much, then you're not going to change it. But the thing about Demon Souls is like you can tell night and day between playing Demon Souls and Dark Souls, because Dark Souls feels like a more refined, like it knows so much more about like what it is. Like even from like a visual standpoint, of Dark Souls is it feels all tied together. You know what I mean? Whereas Demon Souls not.
The word that I want to interject with real quick is that it's a very projected evolution of what they learned from Demon Souls and the things that were attracted them, especially in replaying their title and seeing how it the community reacted to it.
Right.
Is that there were some oddball things that were probably a little too oddball to reintroduce in a completely separate game.
Yeah.
And then there were things that made a lot of sense. And they definitely attacked that from a design perspective, which is Dark Souls. I have so little to complain about that when I mirror it up against with Demon Souls, because Demon Souls was definitely the pioneer heading west, trying to blaze a trail through things that, and fumbling along the way while it was doing it, which isn't to say that it didn't lay the groundwork for more to come, but it definitely made a lot of mistakes. It's a very far from perfect title.
Right.
And despite the fact that it's a cult classic, and I think I might recommend it to people, and I have recommended it to you, which is how you ended up playing it in the first place.
I completely second,
But I absolutely know that when I talk about this game or when I recommend this game, that
there's a caveat.
It comes with a very, very thick layer of fat on it, where some people are into that. Some people are into that, some people like fatty meat, some people don't. It's just a preference thing.
It's a taste
and some people have absolutely no patience. They have no patience for things that are obscure or not streamlined. Or again, we live in a world that's very centered around instant gratification.
Sure.
And this game runs exactly the opposite grain, which is that it's
not like that at all.
It's going to ask you for patience. It's going to ask you for learning to play by some of its very obscure rules in order to find a particular success or an enjoyment from it. And it definitely plays with that line that borders, am I having fun or am I just trying to finish this?
Right. Because
that game definitely has a couple, especially that swamp example that we talked with. The conversation is a swamp that we're trying to climb out of, because this From Software is a Software is a giant hole to swim in.
It's I would say seconded is that I know I might have come off a little negative about the game, but I I love how fucking weird this game is. I wouldn't change a fucking thing about it. I
Sure,
think that's
there's a lot to love.
right. There's a lot of good in that obscurity, and there's like that. Like I think when Demon Souls, if you play Dark Souls, is like you have a steering wheel in Dark Souls. Like Demon Souls feels like you tried to steer and the wheel just comes off. Like it just doesn't. It will not play to the same expectation over and over and over again. It's like you're playing like a different section with a different set of rules like each fucking time, and that's kind of the joy of it for me. And some like super fucking odd decisions. And I love things that do that. But I would say like I would recommend the same thing. I would recommend the game with the caveat of like do not fucking expect this to be like a smooth as silk like experience. But that's exactly the reason why I think that there is an argument that they would refine the remake a little bit in that sense. But I guess we'll just have to see, right? Well, like the game is an announced exclusive PS5 title, even though that wasn't, which is a reason to buy it for sure for me. So I'm looking forward to seeing those changes.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna hold you to that real quick. That would be the make or break for you, is the fact that the console on its own maybe isn't wowing you, but as a premium launch title, that will justify your purchase. Are you telling me that you'll buy the PS5 for Demon Souls?
I have to buy I think it's a contributing factor. The exclusivity. It's the same reason why Bloodborne was a pull for us. Like in that respect. Like I wouldn't have bought like a fucking. I think okay. So there's this thing that we were talking about right earlier, which is like there's an aspect of exclusivity that sells a system, right? Like Halo on.
That's the marketing team
Xbox
on
or
that one.
Bloodborne on PS4. There's a caveat to that too, where I think like in my brain, I have to know that there's going to be more than one thing coming down the line for a game.
Right. It's very hard to just. How much is the PS5?
Does
like anybody know?
$500-$600. Is that right?
Jesus.
JC will get to us on that if you can.
Okay.
But I'm pretty
so
sure
that
it's
being
6.
said, I think the disc drive version is the more expensive of the two, right?
Yeah, I think. Well, the disc drive is physical hardware that is implemented into it, so you can play. It's also backwards compatible that way. So if you want to play
compatible with PS4,
yeah, that's the whole point of the disc drive.
I'm obviously the one who knows far fewer about this, but that just reflects the fact that I don't have the intention to purchase this thing, and because I'm not interested in it, I didn't do my homework on this.
Right. Well,
but without sounding too much like a Philistine, I am shocked to hear that you would want to invest in a console that is at such a high price point.
I don't like
$500 is it's no drop in the bucket there. For a game that you've already played and essentially has a fresh coat
based
on what we know about the title
sure.
At the moment, there's no reason for you to expect it to be anything other than Demon Souls in a new engine.
How am I going to play Demon Souls otherwise?
You gotta come over.
I would love to do that. I'd actually just love to play.
Heat some pizza up.
Oh,
we'll
fuck,
get some
dude.
soda.
That's just not
stay
even.
Up till 2 a.m.
Yeah. So the thing that's being brought up here is that there's two different prices. So the backwards. This is gonna piss you off. I think is the backwards compatible one is more expensive because it takes a disc drive.
If you haven't picked up from my tone of voice, is that I know that this is a cash grab in more ways than one. I know that it's all under the veil of. Sure, I'm sure that there's some people with really honest and good and even artistic intentions when they made a pull for. You know what? We need to get Demon Souls back under our belt here, and we want to expose more people to it because not enough people were allowed to experience this hidden gem. However, I do believe that there are enough other people in the room who hear this and think, yeah, well, all we need to do is hire a third-party studio, have them do the work, put it as a launch title for our new system, our upcoming system,
Right.
and again, you're piggybacking off of the success of Miyazaki's Soulsborne brand.
Yes.
But it's kind of a trap. It's kind of a trap because you are going back in time, and people have the expectation of the polished and evolved Soulsborne titles of the modern era,
that's
not
why
the broken training wheels inept bicycle that got you to school, but at the same time you're beat up and bruised along the way. Like, sure, did I have fun? Maybe, but it's the messed up tricycle when you have a motorcycle. The title. I think that it's a trap for people to spend $400 to $500 on a console, and then whatever the heck they're charging for the game.
This is exactly
to pick it up and think, wow, this isn't at all like Sekiro. This isn't at all like Dark Souls 3 or Bloodborne.
I honestly
think... gives? Like, when does the game get good?
Oh, God.
And
is that really
I can absolutely hear the screams of people who are tired and frustrated. And it's kind of an archaic game to look back on, despite the fact that...
That's why you refine the experience. Because people are going to say exactly what you're talking about. And I think that a studio where you have the guy who's running everything contributing this this is a launch title, this is a game that we want, and we're going to give it to this studio to do this thing. This cannot be fucked up. Like, this is not a title that you can just throw into the fire and be like, well, I hope that this launch title doesn't piss off like a large majority of people who love our other exclusive titles like Bloodborne. Like, if this game is going to be sitting next to those games in comparison, I can guarantee you that even if it doesn't show up like this, and it could very easily go your way of like they're just going to leave it as is, as the cult classic, there's no fucking way that they didn't have that conversation of like, do we keep everything the same? And I guarantee you that there was so many people who raised their concerns of like, this game needs to be more refined. Like, you cannot throw this out the way that it was and expect people to just accept it 100% for what it is. But people have this expectations of remakes, depending on like the title, all the time. And then there is something changed. And even if it's a small change, so it's like, are we going to alienate the people that would just want a pure blood remake of this? I think that they're going to just meet somewhere in the middle and just say, look, we're just going to make quality of life changes. We're going to enhance the atmosphere. We're going to pull the camera in closer to make that more of an experience.
Sometimes, unless you're moving really fast.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is that they, just from the trailers, it's so obvious that they're just trying to capitalize on a mood rather than like this unfocused experience. They're already building.
What mood is that?
This dark, like very like dimly lit. Like I'm just saying is that the atmosphere of each of these areas is going to be enhanced and pulling in, and they were going to want it to look cinematic. They've added like 100 different animations for like even like your parries and shit like that. Like just from the trailer, like they've invested a lot of time into the animation, the lighting of each area. I just, in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, that's what this is going to be. This is going to be them with a string on tied to your character, and it's like, this is the way that you're going. We're going to light this way so you can go this way. They're going to clear, I guarantee you this is going to be the fucking case, is that they're going to leave the swamp just the way it is, but there's going to be like a lighting difference. They're going to put like torches on there so they can lead you through it rather than meander.
My memory of that game is old enough that I can't remember if that was the case. Are torches already or some sort of lighting, but it's subtle enough that there's no way that you would have noticed it. And in the new lighting system, it's just, can we make the torches 4 times as bright, and then they're visible, but they were always there. Something to that argument, right? Because if you look at the design of especially Bloodborne does it a ton, that there's like a lantern hanging or a torch, or like the moonlight is particularly strong on a particular path. because the game is trying to unaudibly guide you through just the instincts that are programmed into you to go to the shiniest spot in front of you.
Right.
But it's possible. I don't want to detract from your argument at all, but it might be possible that there are stakes in the ground or something.
I'm
that
just saying something
Miyazaki
like that.
did put there, and you're like,
sure,
yeah, they'll figure it out.
Yeah,
They'll
but
figure that's enough. The designer's like,
gonna...
should we make them brighter or bigger? He's like, no. They gotta learn to crawl before they can walk. Just let them squirm.
I definitely think that there's like, I can see this going both ways, right? So I can see it going in the fact that they're just not going to touch it, and I can see my argument. Like, I see those both as a reality. And I know that, like, specifically this title, like, it is for me, and I'm sure it is for you. Like, it's a good fucking game. It's a good game, and we both enjoyed the fuck out of it. And I'm sure that, like, anybody who's, like, listening to this is thinking the same way. Would you guys actually watch or play a game knowing that it was going to be different? Would you be excited for more changes? Would you want it to just be the same fucking thing? I can guarantee you that I don't want to.
Real quick, it just something just popped into my head. Do you
Sure.
remember when Nintendo released? So Nintendo put out Twilight Princess on GameCube.
Yeah.
And then the
They
Wii
flipped it.
came out.
Yeah.
And Twilight Princess for the Wii was a launch title there. Oh my goodness! Actually, this happened more than once. I'm just going down a rabbit hole of my mind here because they did the same thing with Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild was a Wii U title first,
Right?
And then they ported it to the new console.
Sure.
The difference there is that you had, slightly more powerful hardware. I don't know if the Switch was actually that much more powerful.
It was more.
But in the case of the
better.
Twilight Princess, the GameCube was a traditional controller. Maybe not traditional, but it was a hardwired controller into the console. And then the Wii was obviously a huge, like, trying to sell the motion control thing super hard.
Sure.
And I don't know if I had owned the GameCube version first, if I would have ever thought to purchase the Wii remake, despite the fact that they obviously had to do a lot of things to that, despite the fact that it looks the same.
Right.
Kind of. They had to do quite a few things to make that work from a technical standpoint, and they mirrored the whole game, right? Wasn't that right? They ended up having to literally flip everything to being a mirror image.
I don't know why the case
title.
Of that was, but it was just like this really odd thing.
It's Link's sword hand.
Right. That's right.
Am I misremembering that? You can fact check me on that. But Link is left-handed.
Right.
And for the Wii title, I think they had to make him right-handed because more people are right-handed than left-handed.
And that's what they would hold the controller with. So it would make
so if you had to swing
easier.
something around, it felt more natural to hold something in a
how fucking
majority
weird.
Dominant hand.
How fucking weird to think that was like their solution, and such a simple thing, and something that maybe no one.
I don't know
really...
if it's simple.
Well, I mean, it sounds like it would be like remapping like a character's like the sword and everything like that to another hand seems like more work almost. But one of the things that I definitely wanted to press you on with, like, and I hate to jump back here, but like, remember that Dragon God fight?
Do you want to call it a fight, or do you want to call it one of those things?
How
where
disappointing
it's a puzzle?
How disappointing was that fight?
What about the fight?
I hated it, and I would like
fight.
Exactly, but
besides the sort of the killing blow that you deliver with whatever weapon you have on you at the very end, essentially the entire boss fight is
a puzzle,
a small, almost quick time event level participation.
There's no justice to say that it's a puzzle, and I shouldn't have said that. And it's definitely not on the level of a quick time, but it's like if quick times didn't have like buttons. And you had to guess your way through.
If you think that's going to be any different in the newer version of the game, I think you're terribly wrong.
I want it to be.
I think it's going to be one of those things where we have to wait and see.
Yeah.
I think everybody's going to have something different to say about this, but if you're saying you're a purist, I think you should
I'm okay with each one. I think I've resolved in myself that whatever happens with that Demon Souls remake, I'll be okay, and I'll probably enjoy it either way. I'm just happy that they finally did it anyway. So like, it's just another fucking game to just check off the list that needed to like come back and in whatever money grabbing form that it might be in.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much it, I think, as far as like our subjects are concerned.
Well, we spent so much time talking about the frickin' swamp that
Yeah.
you know, we might as well. You can be Donkey and I can be Shrek, and we could just live in it.
Just for anybody who's like listening for right now, I think if you guys have anything that you want us to address about maybe concerns that you have with the remake of Demon Souls, things that you enjoyed for like that original, things that you want to have retained, maybe things that you want to have changed. Like, I know that the Dragon God thing is like something I would absolutely want changed. I don't think that they're going to change it. I think
Costs money to do that.
it does cost money, but it looks like it. We'll see. But if you guys have anything like that you guys want us to look at and read on the next episode of this, we would be absolutely thrilled to talk about this more. And I'm sure that this is not the end of From Software to any degree, because
You think it's fucking over? It's never over. There's more swamp.
there's so much more swamp. So with that being said, we're gonna wrap it up. This was awesome, and we hope that you guys enjoyed the conversation, and thank you so much for listening. And we'll be back next week with another episode. And we don't have a confirmed topic for that right at the moment, I don't think, but we're definitely gonna get into some other news. If you guys have
bleed over into whatever we decide to talk about next week.
Yeah, exactly. And if you guys have anything that you want us to talk about too, just go ahead and just give us a shout in either the comments or whatever it is, email, whatever is the most accessible for your convenience. We'll look at it, and we'll see you guys next time.
See you next time.
Bye.